right, guys. So first of all, welcome to the Dragon's Lair. Yeah. Yeah. I'm on, right? Yeah. You can't hear it. There you go. Yeah. All right. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming. You know, everybody got the tour, and I said, but I want to say again one more time, thank you guys for being a part of Redcon1. Truly, without you guys, it would not be what it is today. No question about it. So first off, thank you. And I'll give a hand for you guys. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, okay, we have three speakers today. Well, we have three right now, and then we have us three, and we're going to talk about a little bit about behind the scenes of how Redcon1 came to be and give you guys kind of the story behind the story, right? And then we also have in the house Neil Hill. Neil, stand up. Neil Hill is a very, very well-known, famous trainer. You guys, I'm sure, have already heard of him. Trains Flex Lewis, William Bonac, among many, many, many others, and my wife as well. So that's, yes. He's also created the Y3T training system and has been featured on every magazine and videos all over the world. So Neil's going to first off, thank you, Neil. Neil didn't have to come here. He chose to come here and do this today. So thank you, Neil. And also we have Joe Bennett. Joe Bennett is, of course, you guys all know him, the hypertrophy coach. And Joe is featured in all of our videos, but he's also a very well-known, well-respected trainer at the MI40 gym, training everything from fitness and figure competitors all the way to bodybuilders and even celebrities nowadays. So thank you, Joe, for being here also. So anyway, the reason why I got us all three up here is because we all kind of experienced the beginning of Redcon1 together, but all from different perspectives. And all three of these guys, Eric had just started at Blackstone when he also was fired. it kind of came together at the very end, and then of course Eduardo was part of Blackstone for about a year before we kind of split up. And so what I thought I would tell is kind of the behind the scenes of how Redcon began, and give you guys a little taste of how things kind of happened. And so basically, I'm assuming everybody knows, you know, my friend and I, my best friend for many years, PJ Braun and I, started Blackstone Labs together in 2011. You know, it was basically two gym guys, dudes, bros, right, that really got an opportunity to create something special. We had a product that was going to be discontinued that we were able to get for free from a company we worked for called Iron Mag Labs. And it allowed us an opportunity, two best friends, basically, to start a business together. And we never anticipated that it would become what it was. And I know I showed you guys the big plaque for the Inc. 500, where we were the 27th fastest growing company in the country. And it kind of happened very fast. But along the way, things changed. Just to give you an example, when we started, you know, we're both single guys. I met my wife and everything like that, but we weren't anywhere near where we are. We had no children or anything like that. And the company was just in its infancy, and we were just having fun. And along the way, as you guys know in life, people change. And he and I changed very dramatically. I had a family, my values and things that were important to me changed, whereas he was kind of still doing the same thing that he was doing when we met 10 years before. And so things just started really not going well with us as a friendship, and then in business together. His idea of what he wanted the company to be and mine were very, very different. And it all kind of came to a head with a kid named Chris. This kid was not a good employee, right? Without going into all the minutia of it, he wasn't a good employee. And more than that, more than him not being a great employee, he was a very negative guy to be around. And the one thing I can tell you about myself is no matter what happens in my life, because I've certainly, just like everybody here, have had down points in my life, but I always make a point, no matter what's going on, to stay positive. Even if I might not feel positive at the moment, I literally force myself, I will myself to be positive even in the most negative situations. And as a result of that, I've turned some really bad things in my life into some really tremendously good things. And this kid, Chris, was just toxic to be around. And he decided that and everybody can, yeah. So what ended up happening was he was going to move with his family down to Boca to work for us. And I told PJ that I thought that was a bad idea, and that I didn't want him to basically move his whole family when I thought it wasn't going to work out. So even though it seemed, I'm sure, to Chris that it would be a bad thing, that it was mean to let him go. The truth of the matter was I just didn't want his whole family to come here and then we would have to let him go in the future. It just wasn't going to work no matter what. And so to make this long story short, basically PJ and I agreed. That kid ended up calling PJ and being upset and crying to PJ. PJ decided to take him back, and it became a huge fight that ended up something very small, kind of broke the camel's back and ended the relationship for the company. And at the same time, it ended the relationship for Eric and Blackstone, and also Eduardo and Blackstone, and my father-in-law and Eddie too. So, yeah, here you give your perspective of that.
Oh. So, Aaron and I, met years before. I think mutually through Flex, right? Yeah. And I worked at BSN for 11 years. I started at that company when I was one of the first employees. So, I went from it being a very entrepreneurial environment, fun, to super corporate, post-Glambia. Neil can attest to that one. Where I'd have a business case to go to take a piss, So it was got to be where I didn't like that. I watched what Aaron and PJ were doing, and they were just bucking the system. They were doing it different. It's almost like they didn't have a rule book that they had to go on. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but they wanted to do something, they just did it, and I really respected them for it. So Aaron and I had always talked about, I said, hey, if there's ever an opportunity, I'd love to work with you. And, we just always mutually, different events, we're always around each other. And one Sunday he called me, he's like, hey, you said you want to work for me, right? And I said, yeah. He's like, all right, can you start Monday? I got this international sales position for you. So I went in, I had like a week where I was just kind of like picking up stuff, trying to, get on board. And then the following Monday was Aaron came back from vacation and all fucking hell broke loose, really. Aaron left the building, Eduardo with him, Howard, Eddie. And I remember texting Aaron, I'm like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm not here for PJ, I'm here for you. And a little history, PJ and I don't get along. I don't think we really ever have. Not a lot of love lost there between the two of us. And I remember him calling me in the office and telling me like, oh, it's not you. I'm like, all right, no, it is me. Like I'm going. So long and short, yeah, that was the end of him. That was like the genesis, because I think Aaron took a day to kind of, collect everything. And that's one thing I always give him so much credit for. I mean, life got turned upside down, because here's Blackstone's trajectory like this. You think of like, whatever you guys are doing right now, think like, oh, tomorrow's going to be the same, nothing's going to be different. You have all these plans, you're in the process of building a new house, and all of a sudden it's like gone in a heartbeat, So, but he took literally a day, and then the next day he called me and said, hey, you want to do this still? And that was really, that was kind of the beginning of it. And there was never like, oh, woe was me. There was no crying, no. He just took a day to regroup, and that was it. Started on a new venture. So, get more detail after.
Yeah. So the final day at the office was a surprise, obviously. So what ended up happening is we went to work, and I went to work, and Eduardo was there, and Eric was there, and we sat down at my desk like a normal day. And one of the silent partners in the business came in with PJ, and they basically said, pack your shit and get the fuck out of here, literally. And they said, you're out of the business. So that they voted me out. And in reality, you can't do that because there was only two partners that had voting rights, myself and PJ. So we spent the next day going back to the office and kind of waiting it out before he talked to a lawyer. It was very, very dramatic. Here, you want to tell about that?
Yeah. So basically that day, he walks out of that office when he was meeting with these partners, and he goes, let's grab our shit, it's over. And I was like, huh? I was like, okay. And then PJ walks out and he goes, you're fired too. And I was like, all right, whatever. So I just walked out. I was like, there was never really like a choice for me. Like I was never going to side with PJ, even if he offered me $50,000 a month. I was just like, I'm leaving with him. You're crazy. So so I walk out of there and I look at him. I was like, so what happens now? I was like, am I like unemployed now or what happens? He's like, no. He's like, we'll go back to work tomorrow. And so in preparing for what could potentially be a crazy, crazy day, we got stun guns. We had tasers. Walked into the office ready for war, just in case anybody got very froggy. And we walked in the office like nothing was happening. He's at his desk. I sat right next to him, like on the couch that they had in their office. And PJ was like, I'm gonna call the cops on you and get you kicked out of here. And we're just like, okay. He like stood in front of me and was like, you too? He's like, you want to get me to call cops on you? I was like, do whatever you want, dude. I was like, we had every right to be there. We had talked to the lawyer. The lease was in his name, so you can't kick him out. So then there we are, just sitting there, and it was like the most uncomfortable situation you could possibly be in, because everybody is just like on pins and needles, like what's gonna happen. Is somebody going to get violent? Are the cops? Like, what's going to happen? We were just there, armed with tasers, ready. ready.
So anyway, without going too much into detail with this, it was a very dramatic day. And the next day, we basically decided that we got to do something else. I took a day. I took a day to like kind of contemplate the next day, right?
It was the day of, you were like, okay, we like processed it, and then the next day you were like already thinking like, what's the next thing? All right, what are we gonna do? And that's how it went. Like,
So I retained the ownership in Blackstone, but I no longer am. So even to this day, I still own part of the company, but I no longer vote. In other words, I don't make any decisions. I don't have anything to do with products or marketing or anything like that. But I decided the best thing to do was just leave and start back over, basically. And so we took myself, Eduardo, Eric, and we originally went to my house, to my kitchen. And that was 2 days later, and we sat down and started thinking of what we could put in the products. Eric and me basically went through. We spent an hour and a half initially looking at ingredients, coming up with names, and then we started working on the marketing portion of how will this brand be different, what will we stand for. Like we discussed, we worked on a brand book. And a lot of that stuff happened very quickly. The next few days we actually spent right up there in Flex's office around his conference table. You, me, Eddie, and Howard, and Matt Meinrod was up there. Matt Meinrod had moved down to work for Blackstone, and by the time his car got here with all his stuff, Blackstone was gone. So literally he drove down thinking he was going to Blackstone and ended up around the table trying to figure out what to do next. And so basically, a marketing 101 thing for you guys, one of the things I talk about a lot is when you come up with the name of a company or you come up with what the company stands for, you want a few things. You want it to be short. You want somebody to be able to remember it. Ideally, you want it to mean something, to stand for something. You want the URL to be available, because that's super tough these days. Every URL domain is taken. And then you want to have the trademark available. So we sat around for a while trying to think of something that fit with the ideas and the ideals of the company that actually worked for all of those things. And we
wanted it to be military.
Yeah, we wanted military. I'd already had the two Navy SEALs on board, Brandon Cruz and Ryan Bates. Yeah, we already named the products, so we had to figure out what a name for this. And so, as we were looking around for synonyms,
originally I remember, because I still have the first logo on my phone. It was supposed to be called Redcon Labs, and he wanted to get away from labs altogether, just to not associate it. And you had also had Redcon1, a pre-workout from Platinum Labs that they took from you. That's another story. So we didn't want to get into the new company already with like litigation, basically. Like the day we come out, we get sued because of Redcon1. So I was up there actually, I remember, because I was Googling different military terms for readiness, preparedness, and I stumbled upon Redcon. It was like Redcon 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and Redcon1, the literal definition was the most highest state of readiness. And like I told him, I was like, I literally turned the computer on, I was like, what do you think, Redcon1? He's like, I love it. Great. He's like, check if the URL is available. So we looked at the URL. The URL was like ridiculously expensive. It was $5,000. Well, it was expensive though. It felt expensive at the time because like you're sitting there and paying $5,000 for something that could work, could not work, may not be anything. So he took like 5 minutes, and then we bought the URL, and then
there was a lot of debate because of the $5,000.
Yeah, the $5,000 was like a big debate because you're like, do I want to spend $5,000? What if? Because we Googled it and somebody else already had a trademark for it. Had for Redcon1, but it was like somebody had like just blanketed Redcon1 for every category, but they hadn't brought it to commerce. So if we bring it to commerce first, it's ours, and that's kind of what ended up happening. We said fuck it, and just like usually he lives with like a perpetual case of the fuck it's. So like like he just said fuck it, let's do it, and that's how it started. It was Redcon1.
He's right. So usually for me, what's worked for me, and it hasn't always worked. It's not like this is 100%, but usually when I see something that I want to do, I don't think about it a whole lot. I just do it. And usually that works out really well because most people in life are really paralyzed by indecision. I know my dad was notorious. Maybe this is why I went the whole opposite direction. My dad would spend weeks and weeks and weeks researching a couch, or a year researching what will be the next car he may want to buy, and then he won't buy it because he's like, well, it's not. Consumer Reports said that it, only 8 out of 10. I can't do it. And so he spent a lot of his life debating and being very unsure of his decisions. Even when he make a decision, he wasn't always sure. And so I think that I saw that and the amount of time wasted on that, and went the whole different direction. So usually when I see something that I want to do or I think this is a good idea, I just say, okay, let's do it. And then we do. And it's not always 100%, doesn't work out every time, but it definitely works out better than sitting around debating if you should do something or not.
But also, I think the thing that you can take from that, like if you guys, thinking from a business perspective, is you just have to be willing to bet on yourself. And that's one thing like my dad always told me is, you just have to be confident enough in yourself that you'll bet on yourself. And I think that's one thing, you'll learn from Aaron is, it is a case of the fuck it's a lot where he's just like, but I think that comes from, it's born of just being confident and being like, I'm willing to roll the dice because I'll take a risk on myself because I'm going to come up positive more times than negative. Because, I was at Monkey Joe's with my youngest kid and he called me, he's like, hey, what do you think of this? And when he brought up Redcon Labs, I'm like, yeah, let's go. But I mean, again, he'd already put Blackstone to bed, like, okay, that chapter of my life is closed, even though he's still an owner. And like, I'm betting on myself again on this one, and it's really what happened. And it's kind of like, I'm sure you'll dive into the story of Dallas, but it was the same thing. Like he said, hey, what do you think about Dallas? Because I think we had talked about bringing Dallas over to Blackstone at one point. And it was the same thing. It's like, yep, I'll put my chips on the table because I believe in this enough. And it's really one thing you guys can take away from, what might seem like he's just, I don't know, maybe some people might think it's carelessness. It's confidence in himself enough to say, like, I believe in me more than anyone, and I'm going to just go with it. So,
risk tolerance.
Yeah.
Very high risk tolerance. That's definitely true. Yeah, that I thank you. That's a nice thing to say. I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that betting on myself and knowing that we could do it, I had a lot of confidence right from the beginning. Like I told you guys in there, when I saw the logo and we had the name, I just knew it was going to work. Like, I'm sure you guys in your life, there's been things where you're like, man, this is definitely going to work. This is 100%. So I had very, very little doubt. I only had a few moments of doubt at all since the whole process. And I guess I'll tell you about that one moment and then we'll go back. So when we actually turned the site on live for the first time, we turned it on for supplements. And it was this big, some of you guys probably remember, we had a lot of buildup. We had been pumping it up on social media. We've been selling shirts for a month. Obviously, Dallas and everybody else was posting. A lot of the posting was very like, just to hype up the brand or get it out there. A lot of people didn't even know what we were going to be doing. They were not clear on if it was selling T-shirts or if there's something else going on, because I told everybody to keep it a secret. So when people would ask Dallas, what is Redcon1, he'd say, I can't tell you.
Your first Instagram post was, the first rule of Redcon1 is you don't talk about Redcon1. It's like Fight Club. That was the first ever post.
Oh, and that's true. And a lot of people were kind of confused. They didn't know 100% what it was or anything. And so I was like, okay, we're going to turn this thing on for supplements. What time we turn it on? Like at 8 o'clock at night or something? Sometimes somewhere at night.
Sitting in the office at night, just watching the website go, and then like we switched it on, and literally it was like.
Yeah. So we were there, and it was a group of us, the marketing team, which is bigger by that point, and about 10 of us or so, right? And so we were there, and we were drinking. I got champagne for everybody, and we're like, okay, press the button, make it live. And before they pressed the button, I was like, man, if this doesn't work, like, it's like, fuck. I was looking at everybody else, and I was like, I sure hope this works. All these people, we had champagne, everybody's ready to celebrate. And obviously, if you press the button, it turns on and nothing happens. There's no sales. It'd be like, uh-oh. Yeah. And so, at that moment, I was, I got to admit, I felt like nervous. And then we pressed the button, and all of a sudden, it was like sale, where people were actually obviously waiting for the moment that we turned it on. And there was a few hundred sales in the first hour where it was like, holy shit, like it worked, like that was one of the only moments of nervousness. But like I said before, when I reached out to Dallas, the reasons why I liked Dallas so much when I didn't even know him was he was very underutilized for BSN. So nobody really knew him. He had been out for a while. He had been competing. He won a pro show in California. But it was like BSN didn't do anything with him. There was no videos. There was really very little pictures. He wasn't utilized in any way. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was that he is incredibly strong. So he wasn't just this big dude. He was very, very strong, like Ronnie Coleman, who he idolized.
And, the other thing was he was one of the only bodybuilders out there that actually had a personality. Like, he was a big personality, just like had a presence about him. He was funny, personable. You could have him on camera and not be like bored to tears as soon as they start talking.
So it was very like almost that first conversation up there. We knew that that's who we wanted to get, and then the fact that when I called him, he was so sure immediately that he was willing to do it, move across the country, leave everything he knew, and move to Boca. And it's a big, if you've ever, you guys probably haven't, but where he comes from in Tennessee is about as opposite of Boca as you could possibly be. And obviously it took a big leap of faith to come down here for a new company who has no, I mean, it's not like we were established by any means. So, you know, new companies, as you guys I'm sure have seen, come and go all the time. So the fact that he was willing to come down here and immediately start working and doing content, and I told him you're going to be the most videoed bodybuilder in the history of bodybuilding, and I think that he was. Once he came down here and we started moving, you know, things started happening at a very rapid rate. What's the first thing you remember that was big?
I don't know, for me, I think the first thing I remember being big was the first big domestic PO we got. It was like almost $40,000. So it was one of the first ones we took too, and it was, so there was someone who was just willing to bet on us too. It was a pre-sale. We didn't even have products, and they knew it, but they were just confident in us, the brand, that they put their chips down. It's kind of like, shit, we got to deliver, because, and also too, just like we were upstairs here for maybe 7-10 days, right? And then we moved to a temporary office in Boca, and like I told you guys earlier, we were hated. So Aaron, Eduardo, and Howard sat in an office that was around the corner from us, and then myself, Rod, Young Lawrence, who got the name Young Lawrence because we thought he was like 20, ended up being almost 30. So his name was Young Lawrence, and we had Ben, Creepy Ben, yeah. So literally we would come into the office and everyone would shut their doors around, because it was a like shared space office. And as soon as we'd show up, it would just, doors would shut, everything went silent. And then when we moved into the other warehouse, that was kind of, I remember walking through it and being like, holy shit, this is real. Yeah, I mean, no product, no nothing. Yeah, and I think that was kind of like, okay, this is real. It's not just talk, it's a real thing now. So
what was your first memory of something big?
My first memory of something big was when we actually got the Total War in, like seeing it, because it had been like, it was a culmination of so much stuff, just like going over and over the labels and going over the names and just thinking like, is this going to work or not? And then when we actually received, remember the picture, like I took a picture like this, but it was just it was a big deal, because like the whole Blackstone thing was very traumatic. So like going from that, how bad that was, to like, remember we didn't work in an office for like a month. Like you and I would go to Abe and Louie's every day and sit and have vodka, and I'd work at the bar, and you'd have meetings at the restaurant every day. So I was still doing customer service for like Dynamic and other companies, because like the Blackstone people just let it go because they weren't in control of that anymore. So I was doing all those jobs on top of like making sure whatever he needed was taken care of. So when we got the Total War, and it was like just like a culmination of all things, it was just like, all right, we did it. And then when the sales turned on and it was going crazy the first day, I was like, oh my God, we're doing it. We're doing it.
So one really great thing that I remember is my wife, Darielle. I don't know how many of you guys dealt with her as the tier operator leader, because that's what she originally, before there was Luke, there was my wife, Darielle. And she was really passionate about it, and she started the program. Kind of the tier operator program was like an idea that I thought would be neat, that we had no idea would become all of this, would have you guys sitting here. So when we started the program, Darielle handled it and was dealing with the emails. And probably not her fondest moment, but I really liked the fact that she would wake up in the morning and be overwhelmed with the amount of emails. And that's actually how Luke got started. Luke was one of our most active and most loyal, most productive tier operators. And so when she was ready to turn over the reins, Luke got a call. And Luke came in and interviewed with Darielle, and that's one of the coolest things, to see you guys who have participated and are part of the team move up. And that's what we really, I'm really focused on, making sure that you guys who are this passionate about the brand get an opportunity to represent the brand at the expos and move up the tiers. And hopefully, like Luke and Tina also, who are both tier operators, are full-time employees now. What a cool way to find a great employee. And Luke has been as you guys already know, I don't have to tell you, Luke has been a tremendous asset to the team. And I will say, in terms of, you said about the fuck it attitude. The one thing is that one thing that's good and bad about me is that I always want to get stuff done, and so now, and yes, and so that's one of the things. It takes a special person to work for me because I'm always wanting things done right away, right?
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Is I came from an environment that used to be like that. Then it went corporate, so everything took forever. And then jumping in and working with him, where if he asks you something, just do it right then, because a lot of times you'll just stand there till you get it done. So he used to always ask us, like when we'd be processing orders, he'd be like, "Did you get the card? Did you get the card?" So, but he slaps his hand. Yeah, it was Yeah, it was involuntary. He had no idea he did it. And then Eduardo and I used to do it to him all the time when we talked to him. He's like, "Why are you doing that?" Like,
He finally told me now he never does it.
but that behavior, though, is also why, like, if we want to do a new product, we just move on it. Like, we'll talk about it, get it done, name it, Eduardo files a trademark, and away we go to the manufacturing. So, we test it internally. We do all the stuff we need to, but there's never really a hesitation of like, oh, should we do this? Should we not? Yeah, no, it's just, we go. I mean, that's the thing, is in the pace we work at, that's why, we're in our 14th month of sales. I don't know if you can say it, but we've eclipsed by far where I was at BSN in the beginning. It's far greater than their first 2 years of business. Blackstone, arguably it is the fastest growing company in history, especially from it started in a conversation up there, more or less. So. Yeah.